following segment is sponsored by Forum Health.
There's a lot of interest these days in hormone replacement therapy and its benefits. That goes for women and for men. Dr. Connie Casebolt is here from Forum Health Greenville to tell us more about that. Good morning, Dr. Connie.
Good morning.
First thing, people might think that hormones are something to consider around menopause, but we start to lose hormones in our early 30s, right?
That's right. And so that's why both men and women should start thinking about getting those measured in their no later than 40.
And the process all starts with lab work. There's also a medical evaluation. But in general, how might somebody know when they're ready for hormone replacement therapy or when that's becoming an issue?
Okay, so for women, they may notice night sweats, hot flashes, low libido, insomnia, brain fog, belly fat, dryness in certain intimate areas. Those could be triggers that they're low in hormones.
Yeah, and men may be experiencing symptoms that can be reversed with hormone replacement therapy as well.
Yes, they may notice belly fat, blood sugar issues, low libido, grumpy. So sometimes that grumpy man syndrome could actually be that their hormones are low.
Okay, and at Forum Health Greenville, you talk about the solution for all these symptoms. It's bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. Give us that overview, what that's all about.
Yes, so it's important not to use synthetics, and so bioidentical means natural. They're identical to what you used to make in abundance. We either use pellet therapy, which is implanted under the skin, slow release. For men, we can do injections. For women, we can do something called troches, which is under the tongue. The important thing is that it be natural and be done correctly, and we specialize in that.
And I think this is interesting. You talk about the benefits of hormone replacement therapy beyond what most people might realize. What are some of those benefits?
Yeah, so in addition to feeling better, it's actually important for heart health. There are more testosterone receptors in the heart than anywhere else. Brain health, we can actually probably prevent, in some cases, of dementia. Bone health, it's fantastic at maintaining bone health and not getting osteoporosis.
Okay, so that's got people's attention now, and you've got a special at Forum Health this month that people want to know about. It starts with 30% off hormone labs for new patients. We've got that info on screen. Tell us about this.
Yes, so May is Hormone Emphasis Month at Forum Health because we want everyone to experience the benefits of hormone replacement. So 30% off hormone labs. If you also refer a friend who comes in and decides to do hormone replacement with us, you yourself will get a $100 credit at the office. And of course, it's always helpful if you mention Fox Carolina, so we know how people heard about this.
All right, wonderful. And overall, let's talk about the functional medicine practice that is Forum Health Greenville. You also offer weight loss, a nutritional IV bar, and aesthetics, beauty treatments. Anything else you want people to know about your practice?
Just that we're on the map, and if people have vexing problems that they're not getting solutions, we are that go-to place.
Yeah, and you make these conversations really easy to have. So anybody watching can visit forumhealthgreenville.com, or they can call the number on screen, 774-9435, and learn more about making an appointment work with you. Dr. Connie Casebolt, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now